meeting minutes, agenda. All right, so we'll call this meeting to order at 3:20. And our first order of business is to call the roll. So Karen, if you could call the roll, please, for this ad hoc.
Yes,
Thank you.
please. Jen Rodriguez,
Here.
Kristen Besega,
Here.
Patrice McCarthy,
Here.
Margaret Gustafson,
Here.
and Dr. Rowe is not currently on. Sarah Lar Fitzsimons. Maybe she's coming late, I don't know. And Dr. Ritchie.
Here.
Thank you.
We also have in attendance representatives from SDE, Julianne and Kaylin. Thank you for
Yes.
attending with us. All right, with that in mind, approval of the agenda. Is there any adjustment to the agenda? All right, seeing none, we will continue on with the agenda. Approval of minutes from the last meeting. Is there any changes or edits that need to be made from the last meeting's minutes? Seeing none, we will approve those minutes as standard or as written. We're going to move into the review of the August 11th board notes on regulations. Sarah's saying she can't find the link to join. Could you resend her the link, Karen?
Yes.
Thank you. So if you have those up currently, they were in the materials packet that was dropped, and it was dated August 11th meeting notes. Cynthia, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Just a procedural question. Should the notes have the attendees that were there?
It was the board meeting on August 11th, so I'm not sure. That's a good question for Karen. We just wanted the notes to bring forward to this group in case we needed to refer back to them and go over them really quickly.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, no problem. Thank you, Dr. Ritchie. All right. We might refer back to this once we get into some of the regulations. So it's more there for kind of background and understanding from what the board had said for us to kind of keep an eye on as we go through. Is there any notes about that or discussion on that part there? All right. I don't know why these little pop-ups keep coming up on my screen, but it's like blocking you guys over and over again. So sorry about that. All right, so we're going to go right into the next part of the agenda then, which is action on regulations presented. As stated in our last meeting, Kristen was going to go ahead and kind of get started for us, and she submitted the start of that work for us to review and start having some conversation around and possibly move forward to the board for next steps as well. So Kristen, I'm going to go ahead and hand off this part to you in terms of discussing the different components of it, because I feel like you are deeply ingrained in this work as you presented it forward to us.
Sure. So actually, while Karen has this up on the screen, this is a good place to start. So I know we've talked about, the expiring regulations before, but a good place to start is to note that with all of the sunsetting regulations, the thing is that we have to actively reinstate things that we would like to keep in the regulations that were sunset by the legislature. So on August 11th, we were looking at the recommendations from SDE, and we were establishing some things that, could go back into the regulations that we would have to actively put through the regulatory process again. So that was the first draft that I sent to you, was all the ones that we felt needed to stay in the regulations for some reason or another, which we'll discuss in a second. One of them that I didn't include in my proposal was the 400A, because we decided that that was really a responsibility for Cactopus. And when they have, final drafts of what they're thinking for their regulations for that, then we can move that forward from there. So with that, Karen, can I have you move into the item or put up on the screen, draft regs for ad hoc committee review, the PDF?
Yes.
Thank you. Um, while that's happening, another good thing to note is that there was some talk about like, where's the broad vision, where's like the big changes. With the regulations, regulations have to match existing laws. We can't write regulations that don't follow the law. We have to write regulations that are holding to all the laws that are currently on the books. And the nice thing about our board is if we find something, like I see fees is on this one, if we find something that in the future we would like the legislature to consider as something to amend or change, then we can put forward legislation as our body. So we actually get these two kind of parallel tasks. So on one hand, we have to deal with all the sunset regulations, make the regulations fit current laws, bring them up to date. And that's really like the modernizing work of our board, is we're going to try and bring our regulations, which is a 144-page document with several add-ins, um, lots of which has already been superseded by law, modernizing it by making it work, making it in sync with our current laws as they stand. And then on the other hand, we also have the ability to draft and suggest legislation for the Education Committee to follow. So this document that you're seeing in front of you are a list of sunset regulations. This is the actual regulation wording language, and I'm reading it from the binder myself as well. These are the things that the State Department of Ed and our board as a whole, we discussed this in August, but since they're sunsetting and we would like to keep them, then we have to send them through the regulatory process again. So if we could start with 401. 401 we felt needed to be reinstated into the regulations because it's specifying that in order to work in public education, serve for a board of education in one of these certified positions, that you must hold a valid certificate. One follow-up question I have for SDE that's here is subsection C refers to, hold on. It refers to people who have been persons continuously employed by private special education facilities prior to September 1st, 1980. Is there some way we can get a report as to whether any people still fall into that category? It doesn't have to be right now. But if in the future we find out nobody is in that category, then we might be able to edit this regulation to leave out that one exception.
I imagine we could check on that, but again, that was 45 years ago. So somebody who has been teaching for more than 45 years, I'm gonna guess there's probably not anyone who would fall into that cat. I mean, you never know. Could happen. But...
I disagree. I know
Oh,
three
okay.
myself. Yep.
Okay.
Still
Okay.
actively contributing to the profession.
Okay.
Yes.
Good to know. Thank you, Dr. Ritchie.
Yeah, so and this is only in the APSEPs. This is only people who have been working in an approved private special ed program.
And
For 45
continuously
years.
through this whole time. So they
Right.
could have never
Doesn't mean
moved
you doesn't mean you
positions.
stayed in the
Okay.
profession the whole time. It means you've been in an APSEP for 45 plus years. But we can I'm sure we can check.
So the recommendation, as I understand it, Kristen, then is to keep this based on those ideas and then maybe change it later on should we find that there's nobody in there. Am I understanding that correctly? Okay.
Yes. And I think one of the nice things about our timeline is our ad hoc committee is going to be meeting every 2 weeks. If we hear back in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks that nobody is in this category, then I'll put forward another motion to edit that to be shorter, to not have an exception. And then it would just read, you know, in order to serve for a Board of Education in these positions, you need a valid certificate.
Makes sense. Thank you.
So with 402 versus 403, 402, the reason we talked about how we wanted this reinstated is because it's saying that in order to have your certificate, you'll have to apply for the certificate. That's in 402. And then 403 says, and here's what your application must include. Could it be worded more briefly? Probably, but it's important to say that you must apply for your application. And then 403, the things you need to include in your application, because, you know, the regulations are setting the procedures for our State Department of Education, our incoming teachers, and everyone in this field. Right. So Karen, if you could scroll down a little bit.
So just to clarify 402, does anyone have any discussion around 402 or any things they'd like to add to that in conversation? Okay, and then 403 goes on to page 1 and 2.
So 403B and G were sunset. And the reason we think that those two need to be reinstated is for the application fee. Notice that this application fee is established by the Connecticut General Statutes. So we don't want to say in the regulation, or I guess not say, we don't want to have removed from the regulations saying that they must furnish their fee upon when they're putting their certificate in. We want to keep that in because there is currently a statute that says how much that fee is. That statute is 1045BL with a little parentheses. But I think that's a spot where I remember hearing from, I forget who, someone was saying that the council was considering, well, what if we made the certification process, or at least the certification application, what if we made that fee free? What if we made that something that new applicants to the field wouldn't have to pay? And the problem with changing that in the regulations is that that would be different than the law. The law would supersede the regulations. The way this is worded right now is it says this fee is established by the Connecticut General Statutes. If our board so chose in the future, we could draft a legislative proposal that would remove that initial fee. And this regulation would still fit because the regulation says you furnish a fee as established by the Connecticut General Statutes. If some point later in time, our board wants to put forward the proposal to make it without a fee, then this language would still be relevant and still be true. Are there any questions on 403B?
I see Margaret. Go ahead, Margaret.
I have a question about what's been happening in practice recently. I know with COVID, there were so many state agencies that had executive orders to waive fees. And in economic development need areas, we've been trying to waive fees. So as I understand it, an executive order could still supersede this piece that we're talking about. Are there conversations at SDE about waiving fees ongoing or anything like that? Obviously, we want to be sensitive to any budgetary conversations that are happening and try to align with the State Department of Ed there.
And just to kind of be clear, I think Kristen might have said it already, but I believe that the current fee, and this isn't certification fee, this is the application fee, just to, for understanding. I think it's around $250 per applicant, in addition to them paying for certification, testing, and that kind of thing. So Julia, do you want to go ahead and answer that question?
Yeah, so the the current application review fee is $50, and that's established in statute. Then the balance is depending on the type of certificate, how many endorsements, and so forth. So currently an initial certificate is a total of 200. They apply 50, apply with 50 to start the process. And once we determine their eligibility, then we ask them for the balance. If you're applying to advance to the professional level, again, you can submit just the 50 to have us do the review. The total fee for a professional is $375. So the fees have changed over time. Like they've put in new statutes. They went from 100 to 200 or that sort of thing. There was already legislation that has passed that we found out after the fact. We were not alerted to ahead of time that they are changing the fees again, actually as of October 1st. And our legal office is looking into exactly what this means. They are looking to get rid of fees, and again, we have to see how they're interpreting the law. Getting rid of fees for people who are applying for the first time for an initial certificate. It's not clear to us if they're going to still pay the 50, and then if they determine they get the initial for the first time, do they get a refund? There still will be fees for a professional or cross endorsement. So fees do get changed, but through legislation all the time. We're waiting for that to be explained to us so that we can then share it with the field. So
Karen, would you be able, Julianne, would you be able to connect with Karen and maybe get that language to us so that we can review it, that whatever the public act might be or the legislation that might be that's supposed to be in effect on October 1st, just so that we kind of have an awareness
I'll share it with you. It's a little vague, which is why we reached out to our legal office and we're like, this could be interpreted in a couple different ways. What does this mean? So, but I'm happy to share it with you.
Sure. Thank you. And Karen, do you have that as an action item then?
Yes, I have it.
Thank you. All right, perfect. Thank you. All right. I mean, I think the council did discuss removing financial barriers to candidates, which included application fees and looking at ways to either subsidize or, reallocate who is responsible for certification testing fees, as well as professional fees. It's one of the reasons why we also got rid of the provisional in there as well, to remove, one additional aspect of this. So I think that would be a great thing for the board to consider once we have some clarification on what the fees are being adjusted to in the current language, and maybe make recommendations on what we would like to see based on that work. So that this is staying as is then for B until that work gets done. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, here's what I'm thinking is that for B, if the law changes, this regulation still works because this regulation says you're putting forward this applicant fee as established by the Connecticut General Statutes. If the statutes changes in the future to be 0, then the fee is 0. You're just not putting any money in your application packet. An interesting thing is that application fee can currently be processed by, I believe, is it like check, money order, and certified bank check or something like that? So another thing to look in the future might be making more flexibility in how people can pay those fees, because if you don't have an account that allows you to write checks, or you don't have a bank that will write a bank check, like it's just one little step in the way of making it a little easier for people to submit these fees as needed.
And modernizing. Right. Julianne, go ahead.
Applicants can pay with credit card now as well. The only reason they said certified bank check or money order is because people were sending in personal checks, and shockingly, back when fees were only $17, sometimes those checks were bouncing, and that's why they said no longer personal checks, but credit cards are an option right now and have been.
Yeah.
Great, good to know. Thank you.
All right. In which case, we're on to 403G. So when CPRL originally went over 403G with us, they had said that it was okay for 403G to be allowed to sunset because later in the statutes or later in the regulations, there was a section that had really similar wording. But the difference is in the later section, the evidence that the applicant has a high school diploma, that fell under the Board of Ed's purview. It was one of the responsibilities that the Board of Education um, collected evidence that the applicant has a high school diploma or its equivalent. Whereas this is saying that when an applicant is applying to certification, they need to show evidence that they have a high school diploma or its equivalent. So it was actually apples and oranges. One was the responsibility of the Board of Education, and this was the responsibility of the student teacher as they're applying to their certification. So that was 403G.
there any discussion or question on that? All right, we can continue on.
Karen, if you wouldn't mind scrolling a little for me.
I actually do have
So
a
the-
question.
Go ahead, Margaret.
Okay. So is it really necessary? Because we're talking about folks who are going through an EPP, right? And so the college would have a responsibility to ensure a high school diploma or equivalency. So can we just have a quick conversation about that? Because if it's one less thing that people have to go back and dig out or whatever, then it's one less thing.
Absolutely. Julianne, do you want to respond to that?
I just wanted to point out that the only time we need a high school diploma is in cases where it's a certification that does not require a bachelor's degree. So coaching permits, some of our vocational endorsements, all they need is a high school diploma. They don't need an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. So those are the cases where that's the only time we ask for a high school diploma.
Oh, that is great clarification. And I wonder if maybe because it's stated in such a universal way there, maybe it becomes as relevant to the endorsement.
Right,
Why
yeah,
collect if we don't
all
have
of the
to?
list of items to submit are, these are the types of things we might ask for, but they're not going to be applicable to everyone. Someone might have a bachelor's degree and not a master's degree, so of course we wouldn't ask for a master's degree. You know, again, depending on the circumstances, we might only ask for a high school diploma.
Sure. Dr.
Thank you.
Ritchie?
Just a question going back to the fees. If someone is denied certification, what happens to the fee that was paid?
Currently, the $50 is a $50 non-refundable application review fee. So that for us to do the initial review, it's $50. If let's say someone applied for a professional and they submitted the full $375, if they don't qualify, we would refund all but the $50 non-refundable application review fee.
What about the initial though?
If you applied for an initial and you submitted the 50 but you submitted 200 instead, we would refund everything but the non-refundable. The only thing we would keep is the application review fee. Any overages get refunded.
And who manages the application fee account? And is that something that's a large account, small account? What is that used for?
The application, it goes into the general funds. All the money that comes into our office goes into a general fund.
Is that information public information?
I would certainly imagine it is. I mean, one of the things that we had asked for recently is we said we'd like to have some of the money that comes in from certification to actually be applied to things in certification. So we don't have any. It's just
Following my
a
thinking?
yeah. We have no control over where those funds go. They go into the general fund, and then the state uses it however they choose to use it, I guess.
Okay, thank you for teaching me that.
Thank you, Cynthia. All right, so with that in mind, then there are, certainly a couple things to think about there. The 10-145BL, whether or not to change it, finding out what the new legislation is and what the new fees are. But right now we're moving into that other one. So to go back to G, just to kind of reframe the conversation, evidence that the applicant has a high school diploma or its equivalent. I thought I heard Margaret say something like as relevant to the endorsement. Is that something that we want to consider adding into that language for G? So it doesn't sound broad where all endorsements might need that.
Sarah, give a thumbs up. I don't have the full regs in front of me, so I think Julianne was saying there was something preceding that might have had that language for the long laundry list.
Hmm.
So maybe
So
we
let's
can
put
check
that
on
as
that.
a, yeah, let's
Actually,
put that as
I
a
do
So-
have it in front of me, so
Yeah,
I can
so
answer that.
what that section says is application, in an application for a certificate of permanent applicant, in addition to meeting the specific requirements of each endorsement area, shall submit the following as appropriate to the department. And that's when they list, the fee, the transcripts, the statement of professional experience, those are all, so it already says as appropriate.
where does that fall? Which regulation was that?
403.
Under 403G currently, that's what it says? No, Kristen, can
You're
you
talking about the high school
clarify?
diploma?
That's
Yes.
that statement is the opening line of 403. So 403 reads that statement shall submit the following as appropriate, and then goes on to list A, the application, B, the fee, C, blah, 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 high school diploma. So all of those items are shall submit the following as appropriate.
So does this ad hoc think that we need to add that in under G, or that we just fall back to as appropriate from the first one?
I feel like the language is probably good, and then the implementation, right? If I'm filling out the application online and I indicate which endorsement I'm going for, and the system automatically applies logic to then say, here are the documents you have to upload. Coach, this is high school diploma or higher, things like that. So I feel like the devil's on the implementation side and not so much in this reg side.
And in the implementation side, it does do that already, Julian?
Exactly. So someone applies and we look for what we know the laws require. So if someone's applying for a certificate in elementary, we're going to ask for a bachelor's degree. We're not going to ask them for the high school diploma because that is not needed.
Okay, perfect, because when we
It's
bring
just-
this to the board, we can have that information to discuss
Just
around that.
we follow
Okay.
our routine processing based on what we know the requirements are.
Sure. All right, so I think we're ready to go into 407 then.
Okay, so section 407 is all the responsibilities of boards of education under, like, when they're employing certified staff. So we felt that A was good to be part of the regulation still, because it should still be the responsibility of the Board of Education to determine that the candidate holds the certificate. Similarly, when we were discussing in August, we felt that it was still appropriate that the boards of education provide supervision for all certified staff, including coaches, including DSAP, and undergoing evaluation. So those should still be the responsibilities of the Board of Education.
Does
D,
anyone,
oh yeah, go ahead.
sorry, does anyone have any comment on that, those two parts? Okay, continue on.
So with D, this signed statement would be for now initial to professional. So as people are currently or previously employed by the school district and they're applying for certification, this is most likely they're re-upping their certification from initial to professional, and it would indicate whether or not the teacher's performance at the district was successful. So that's still a portion that we discussed in August that we felt was important, but we can, are there any questions now?
Oh, go ahead, Patrice. Thank you.
Yeah, can I go back to B? I realize this is a broad section about the responsibilities of boards of education, but the notion that a board would supervise either directly or through a representative, a board would never supervise directly any of these staff positions. And I'm a little nervous about, while no one may have read this in 25 years, since we would be authorizing these regulations, I would hate for a board of education to get the idea that they should go to the field and supervise the coach, for example. And I see Cynthia perhaps nodding in agreement.
All right. Thank you, Cynthia. Do you want to go ahead and add to that? And then we can go to Kristen.
Sure. Kristen, did you want to go first? You were before me.
Well, I think the important thing is it says responsibilities of employing agents of Board of Education. So generally, the employing agent of a Board of Education would be the superintendent or the assistant and superintendent, the person who's doing the actual hiring. The employing agent of the Board of Education wouldn't necessarily mean the board members themselves, but I took this to mean the superintendent or the superintendent's designee, which is pretty common in wording for evaluation things.
Okay. I guess my comment is just trying to modernize. Does the State Department rely on these forms, or could there be a digital way to figure out if teachers were successful in their employment? So for example, just looking in the history and the rosters of earning tenure or being employed for many years in a district. Do they still have to do a form, or is there another way for the State Department to, kind of guarantee that they were successful in their work?
Julian.
So the first thing, and then I'm going to come to your specific question, I wanted to point out in 407B, it says supervise either directly or through a designated representative. So again, it would be the principal, or so it's not the board who's doing the supervision, but they specify that already in the regs. And as far as the verified experience, yes, for a number of years now, we have been moving away from that ED 126 form. Each district puts into the EDS successful, confirmation of their successful service at the end of the year, and we rely on that. The only time we ask for a 126 form is if it's either experience outside of Connecticut, and therefore we can't look in our system, or if it's a non-public school, if it's outside of a public school, or there are cases where maybe someone has worked for 4 years and they're in their 5th year and we need 5 years of experience. So 4 are documented, but we need them to document the current school year and they haven't rolled it over yet. But we rely on the automatic confirmation the vast majority of the time. We implemented that a couple of years ago to try to have less paperwork for the districts.
So overall, it's online with the exception of a couple of different specific scenarios. Okay,
Right.
perfect. Thank you. Sarah, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Cynthia, was there something
I was
else
just
you
going to
wanted to add
say,
to that?
I was going to say, so some of this language could be modernized to maybe add the current systems that the State Department is using to cross-check success within the employment.
Well, yeah.
Where,
Yeah, so it says submit a signed statement. So you're right. You could upload, submit a signed statement or verify through the EDS, or yeah, you could update it, but we already do that. Yeah.
so I'm sorry, just because I feel like we've bounced to a couple of different ones. Are we looking at B or D for that submit? Yes, it's D, submit a signed statement to the department, or what was that again, Julian?
Or they can submit a signed statement, or they can verify successful service through the educator data system, the EDS.
Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
I was wondering
why we're keeping the words in B, why we're keeping the words provisional teaching and provisional educator if we're going from initial to professional now.
I think it's because we still have people who hold provisional. And until we have all those people out of the provisional standing, it would still stand and have to be kind of revisited once we have less people in there in the next 10 to 13 years.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I see Margaret's hand up and then Julianne's.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to, like, Julianne, just to modify your language a little bit. Thank you for doing that on the spot. But if we could move to something like electronic attestation as defined by the agency, just in case EDS gets changed in another 10 years, another group will be sitting here saying, we don't have that anymore. Now we need to modify the regs and whatnot. So whenever we can use a little bit more nebulous language, I guess, would
Yeah.
be helpful.
Can you repeat that one more time? Electronic attestation as defined by the agency?
You got it. Yep.
Okay.
Something like that. I'm sure they'll guide us as well.
And we've done
All right.
something similar where it used to be called the best program. So it says best or current, you know, even though it's now team, it's still, so we can certainly do something like that again.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So are we all set with A, B, and C currently?
There was
Julianne,
one
there's-
other thing I wanted to comment on regarding the listing of the certificates. We no longer have provisional teaching. We do have a provisional educator, so you could get rid of provisional teaching because prior to provisional educator or initial educator, we had initial teaching, and that's a different, those don't exist anymore.
So let's take a pause here then, because if we're going to make some amendments to this, let's make it formal before we kind of move anything
Well,
forward.
so we don't
or
have
move-
any motions. Oh, sorry.
No worries. I was going to say that if we wanted to make a motion to amend any of these things. Kristen, go ahead.
Since we don't have any motions, we can't make any amendments. But what I'll do is, with your permission, at the end of this presentation, I will move all of the things in the document with the amendments that you're suggesting. Is that
Okay.
something that makes sense?
I'm good with it. Everybody else is.
So the
All
amendments
right.
I currently have written down are for 407D, instead of, or in addition to submit a signed statement, I would add or electronic attestation as defined by the agency to D.
Mhm.
And then for 407B, removing the provisional teaching.
And replacing it with provisional educator.
Well, no, provisional educator is already there. So just removing, striking provisional teaching.
Oh, I see it. I'm sorry. I didn't see it on the second line there. My apologies. Okay. Were there any others in there? All right, let's keep this
But-
going.
I think there was the removal, right, on the G? Is that coming out or is that one staying in? The high school diploma?
That was staying in because earlier in that section in 403, it clarifies that you shall submit the following as appropriate.
Okay.
So the evidence for high school diploma would only be needed in certain situations.
Thank you.
All right. So then we are off to types of certifications on part 3, page 3.
Yes. And as Karen is scrolling, I realized there was one thing that I left off. Karen, can you scroll up a little bit, please? So that so that I is the top thing on the page. I neglected to put in H into this document. H is one that we've already discussed, and I can read it for you now because I know it's not on the screen. When I make a motion at the end of this to move all of these to bring them to the whole board as a whole, I would make an amendment to also include for reinstatement as written 407H. 47H says it would be the responsibility of the Board of Education's employing agent to determine before issuing a contract to a bilingual educator that the candidate is bilingual in the language used in the program and in English. The reason we discussed about why H would be important, oh, hopefully that's what Jen is dropping into the chat. I can't read all the chats. The reason why H is important is my understanding is that a bilingual certification certifies that the candidate is bilingual, but not necessarily in the right language that they're being hired for. So this would say, let's say you teach at a bilingual Spanish school in Hartford, that they would need to determine that you are bilingual in Spanish as opposed to Polish. So that was one that there was some discussion on that it could be reinstated for that reason.
Sorry, my microphone was off. Julian, your hand's up. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that when we issue a bilingual endorsement, part of the write-in is the language. So it'll say bilingual Spanish or bilingual Polish, or so that it, and to meet that requirement, they pass the ACTFL test. So that's how they're verifying they are fluent in the other language, and it's very specific to what the language is. So if someone holds a bilingual endorsement in Spanish, they cannot serve as a bilingual French teacher.
Thank you. All right, Lauren. Welcome.
So, hi, thanks. So I caught something earlier, and I apologize if it was already addressed, but I want to make sure that it is. If you scroll up to 10145D-403, number 3. So let me know when you're there. Because if you're going to be making a motion to clean up some language, there's some updated language there. So let me, for number 3. Okay, so it's this, right. If the department is unable to provide the number of assessments required to complete the beginning educator program, the applicant shall be eligible for a one-time extension of the initial educator certificate at no cost to the applicant in order to complete the assessment requirements. Julianne, isn't that referencing the BEST program that no longer exists? Like, what is that talking about? The number of assessments required to complete the beginning educator
I
program?
believe that may be the case, which is why you get like a balance of time we had for completing team. That's a non-issue anymore anyway, because now you get a 10-year certificate and you have the 3 years.
So
yeah, because there are no assessments that we would defer other than.
Right. So this number
Team.
3, like if you're cleaning things up, I don't understand what this number 3 is, and you may want to remove it. Does that make sense?
So it sounds like what you're saying is that this is a holdover from the BEST program that we no longer need or reference
Right.
when getting certified.
Correct.
Okay.
I also wanted to mention I dropped into the chat a link to the act regarding the fees, and it's like a 750-page document, so it's section 433.
Thank you for doing that. So would this be one of the amendments then that we would consider for the end then, correct, Kristen? Okay. All right. Thank you, Lauren, for catching that. So we're on to, so H, Kristen, you're going to add the H language in as is then? Okay. And then I. All right, so we're on to 409 then. Am I understanding that correctly? All right, Cynthia, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going back to the fees again about asking for a duplicate certificate and there's still a fee, but this may be having to be a legislative change, I think is what I just heard.
Yeah, I think there might be already a legislative change that they're trying to figure out. They dropped into the chat that section 33 link to the new language that they're trying to figure out. So that would likely be a legislative change.
Okay, definitely notice
yeah.
at colleges, when you're trying to get your transcripts, that many have gotten rid of the fees because you can print yourself now with a certain emblem that they post on it. So I was just wondering if, we want to make things as simplified and cost effective as we can for current and future educators. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to give time, we've got about 10 more minutes. So I'm going to have Kristen move on to part 2, types of certificates. Right? Am I looking at that? Or part 3?
Or actually, I don't think we finished up I.
Okay.
For I, this regulation is nice because it actually matches the law. So there's currently a law saying that you can employ a substitute teacher that doesn't have a bachelor's degree, and the current practice is you just fill out a form. The form's online, it looks pretty straightforward, and so this would be one of the things the Board of Ed is responsible for, is filling out the form, so your substitute teacher who does not have a bachelor's degree can continue to be a substitute teacher. So this is one where the regulation is matching existing law, and the practice is matching that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Types of certificates, validity of certificates for 409.
Yeah, so there was some like looking at for 409, and the reason that I had put in this date change, adding in the July 1st, 2025, is that with provisional teaching certificates no longer being offered, no longer being distributed to people, that provisional people who are currently under the provisional teaching certificate, their certificate will be valid until it expires, at which time they have to switch over to professional. And so I put in the July 1, 2025, so that those people would still be certified and wouldn't get like kicked back to initial after paying all this money to become provisional certified and finishing the team or best program. So that's why I felt that 409 should be reinstated, just with some edits. And I'm sure with some of these like permanent teaching certificates, that most of these have no people who are currently still on them, but I have a whole bunch of little sticky notes on my sheet here because I wanted to know, were there still people in these older categories? How many people, before I took some of that other language out.
All right. So any of the ad hoc board members have anything they want to state about that or have any concerns around it? All right, Julianne, is your hand raised specific for this part or a different part? All right, go ahead, Julianne.
I just wanted to note, I dropped into the chat a suggestion because some of this wording again is old. So we no longer have provisional teaching. This talks about what was in effect from 1960 to 1989. So I put in a suggestion for you to consider. Really what we would say is from 98 to 25, we had 3 types of certificate. And so I just gave a suggestion for some wording to bring that up to speed. You can look at that as well, decide if you want it.
Kristen, go ahead.
I love that wording, and the only reason I didn't touch the other things was because I was worried, like, what if there is someone that still has one of these certs kicking around? And this looks a lot better. So I am going to copy this into another document so that as we're going through, I'll have a list of all of the amendments everyone so helpfully suggesting. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Julianne. Does anyone else have any comment about that specific area and the wording that Julianne has provided in the chat? And just for the purpose of the public, it currently states during the period of July 1st, 1998 to June 30th, 2025, 3 types of certificates were issued by the board: 1, initial educator; 2, provisional educator; and 3, professional educator. Provisional educator certificates issued prior to July 1st, 2025 will continue to be valid until their dates of expiration, which Kristen is copying and will add as an amendment at the end. Okay. So now 420 then, which is special authorizations, substitute teacher authorizations. Karen, if you can scroll up a little bit.
All right. So for 420, the special authorizations, we felt that that should be reinstated, included in the, continue to be included in the regulations, because we do want to continue to have substitute teacher authorizations. This one was sunset probably because, the idea that, you know, if there was a law, then why have a regulation that just copies it? But that is the point of the regulations, is to mirror the law. So here's one of the things where, like, I'm not a legal expert. I was looking at this one that was sunsetting and felt that it was important to have so that we can continue to have authorization for substitute teachers.
All right, Julianne, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that legislation has already changed it from where it says 40, it's now 60. That's already happened in law. So that's something you would need to update. And also in section B, I think, no, in section A, it talks about a certificate of eligibility. We don't have those and haven't had them. So you can remove that eventually.
Yeah, and certificate of eligibility shows up in the regulations over and over and over. I've highlighted that as like easy fixes for the future, and I have a whole list of how I think we can go about addressing them. So maybe, Julianne, if you and I set up some sort of meeting after this, because some of the things I'm worried about is I'm not an expert on regulations. So when I was looking at the like certificate of eligibility, I was like, well, maybe this is still useful for something that I don't know. So that's really useful. So do you think it would make sense to take out standard? Because standard, are there
Well,
people left on standard?
There are still people, we don't
Okay.
see them often, but there are people who have a standard certificate and there's a simple application, no fee, that they want to convert it. So you can no longer, regulations say you can no longer work under a standard, but if you submit an application, we'll issue a professional in its place for no fee. So that is something we've already done. And as far as certificate of eligibility in section 145D 411, that's where it talks about the certificate of eligibility and how they were discontinued, you know, back in August of 98. And so it does talk about that. That's
All right, thank you. Okay. So changing 40 to 60 and removing certificate of eligibility.
Okay. Got that down. Karen, if you could scroll up a little bit, there we go. So C, D, E, F, those are all under the same 420. They're all under the same substitute teacher authorization. Any changes or modifications we see so far?
So all the 40s are changing to 60, right?
All right. Any others? Right, if you want to, I mean, we're at time right now. If folks are willing to stand for a couple more minutes, we might be able to get right through the rest of the document.
Just a question about E, if I may.
Sure,
Board
go
of
ahead, Sophia.
Education. A Board of Education may not employ a substitute for administrative, supervisory, or special service positions. how is special service position defined? Is that can't be special ed because,
School, no, that's school counselor, school psychologist, social worker, SLP. And that just means we can't issue a long-term sub. We can issue a DSAP. There's other options, but the long-term sub authorization isn't available for those areas.
okay, thank you.
All right. So we're moving down to elementary. We are in when required, ending in 434 on page 4.
Okay, so the sections like A, B, C, D, and it goes on and on and on. Many of those are going to have things that I plan to come back to later to address some of the grade certification spans changing. This one, because it was sunset, we think that, or I think it should be reinstated because this statement is saying that a teacher needs to have an elementary certificate in order to teach in an elementary school. So employed by the Board of Education to teach in pre-K through grade 6. And the pre-K was added because now the certificate range for elementary has widened. So think that it should be reinstated with the edit for pre-K, knowing that many, many other things in the regulations are going to have to change to match grade spans, and that's a whole nother problem.
Okay, any other questions on those? All right, let's move to 481. And this is for remedial reading and remedial language arts.
I would like to make a recommendation that that also starts at pre-K. And I believe it already covers adult education as an endorsement that applies to adult ed as well. But I defer to the state on that.
That was one of the recommendations that I believe CPRL had put in their document as well, and that we had discussed to kind of bring it down to pre-K. So we'll
But
add
also,
that in there.
And
also
yes,
up-
for adult ed, if someone has a 102 and they want to apply for the adult high school credit diploma program from English, because this says you can teach, also offers you to teach developmental reading and language arts, that allows us to issue an adult ed 106 based on this. So that's why it's important to bring this one back, because this clarifies not only can you teach remedial reading, but you can teach developmental reading and language arts.
And that says it on the next page, right? Like that teaching of developmental reading and language arts and the grade levels for which the certificate is endorsed.
right.
So do
but
we
can add
add?
adult
Sorry.
ed
Okay, where
for
would we
grade
add
12
the?
and adult ed?
Can I get what the wording would be on that? Because I can see where pre-K fits in because it's replacing grade 1 with pre-K.
Sure. Certificates shall be endorsed for grades pre-K through 12 and extended to adult education.
Julianne?
I just wanted to point out for adult ed, that's in a separate section of our regs that talks about adult ed certification. And there it says, for example, if you have a professional certificate, that's where it identifies who can teach adult ed.
Okay.
We already used this
Sarah?
as the basis for being able to issue a 106.
Thank you. Sarah Fitzsimons?
I just can't let this go without saying that is such an unrealistic certification that someone would be qualified to teach reading from grades pre-K to adult ed. It is such an unrealistic idea. I get it, it's legislated, it's a regulation, but I just can't go without saying how unrealistic I find that to be.
Thank you. All right. Are there any other adjustments for this section? If not, we're on to the last part. And Sarah, maybe we can have those like that conversation maybe around the other part too, in that endorsement part that Julianne was talking about and firming it up there. All right, so discontinued endorsement and priority authorizations, a discontinued endorsement 608.
All right, 608 is really, really important for us to keep in our regulations because there's a huge number of certification endorsement categories which were previously issued and they're no longer available for you to go for. But if we want to keep people in the teaching pool, we can't expire their certificates and not have them be able to teach anymore. So if we want to be able to keep all the people with like older types of endorsement areas in the teaching profession without making them pay additional fees or apply again or switch them over. This is really, really important for us to put back into the regulations.
Right.
One thing I like about this wording is it doesn't make you list all of the ones that are no longer around because that would be a huge list and I'm sure will change over time.
All right, very good. Is there any discussion on that or recommendations there? Okay, I think we got through all of them. Kristen, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to move all of the regulations in this document forward to the Connecticut Education and Certification and Preparation Board with edits for 403B to remove, 407D to add the words or electronic attestation as defined by the agency, to 407B, remove provisional teaching, 407H to include the wording from Julianne Frost in the chat, during the period from July 1st, 1998 to June 30th, 2025, 3 types of certifications were issued by the board, listing initial educator, provisional educator, 3, the professional educator. The provisional educator certificates issued prior to July 1, 2025 will continue to be valid until their dates of expiration. In 420 to change the days from 40 days to 60 days and remove certificate of eligibility. And then 481, change the authorization to go from pre-K to 12. And since the adult authorization, the extended authorization for adult ed is in a later section, I put that in my notes to revisit later. So again, my motion would be to move all of these regulations forward in the regulatory process with the changes as mentioned.
And when you
Do I
say
have a
move them
second?
forward, you mean to move them forward to the board?
Yes, the
Thank you.
forward to the Connecticut Education Preparation and Certification Board.
Thank you. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
That was Sarah Fitzsimons the second. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll move it to a vote and we will do a roll call vote. It is going to be, I'm going to start off with Margaret.
Yes.
Okay, Patrice.
Yep.
All right, Dr. Ritchie.
Yes.
Okay, Kristen Busega.
Yes.
All right, and Sarah Fitzsimons.
Yes.
And myself, that's a yes. So it moves, a motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for the work on this today. If there's any, is there any public discussion currently, Karen?
No, I did not receive any.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will cater a motion to adjourn and then we will see everybody in 2 weeks.
Second.
All right, thank you. All in favor? I'm going to go ahead and say, go ahead. That's going to be a yes from Margaret and Cynthia Ritchie and Sarah Fitzsimons and Kristen Sega and myself. Thank you all. And I appreciate all the work, especially Kristen, for all the work that you've been doing on this and helping us start moving this work forward. So well done, you. Thank you very much. And we look forward to the continuing work. Patrice?
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks' time.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.